What up, though, everybody? This is Kyle. It's a Thursday. This is Knockouts and Three Counts, and we are back at it again. And since I figured we were going to be rambling, why not bring the man behind Ramblings of a Grappleman back, Mr. Mathew Priest? How you doing, brother man? Throw out the social medias. Let everybody know where they can find your show and all that good stuff. And if you're watching and listening, I need to know that you're in the comments so I can shout you out.
Oh, things are going pretty good over here. Not too shabby, I like to say. I'm also ALIVE Alive and Kick, and get your Alive and Kicking shirt at ProWrestlingTees.com/Mathew Priest. 1T in Matthew. Also, all social media handles, the Twitter, the Instagram, Mathew_Priest, or just check out Ramblings of a Grappleman, all one word, on the Instagram as well.
Well, Corey, how the fuck you feeling? I know what you've been doing for the last 2 hours, because guess what? That's what I've been doing, but go ahead and tell them.
I've been winning. That's what I've been doing, bud. I've been winning. I've been winning these tournaments. Been winning in baseball. I've been winning in life, man. I'm glad to almost get this week in the books, man. Glad to get with you guys on another Thursday, but honestly, I would be more excited if it was Friday and we were talking at this time. So, how you guys doing tonight?
Hey, man, I'm breathing out here, man. I'm kind of pissed because, like, on every Thursday, I wonder, where did my day off go? That's what I'd like to know, because then tomorrow morning, that means I got to be back up, and then that means I got to be back slinging the mail again. Glory, joy. And, hey, we got PFL fights tonight. Before we get into Blood and Guts, what are your guys' quick thoughts on the fights tonight? I mean, we've got what they're touting to be as the heavyweight GOAT in Fabricio Werdum is fighting tonight. We've had the start of the tournament so far. What are your guys' thoughts on the PFL card tonight?
I'm honestly more excited. Werdum's Werdum, and I think we're going to see a kind of energized version, I'm hoping, with him making the transition into a new promotion and stuff. But that being said, I'm more excited for Kayla Harrison, man. I love watching her go through her rise, and she fights tonight in the co-main event. Not exactly sure who her opponent is off the top of my head, but knowing the way the PFL has been going, especially with Kayla Harrison at the helm at 155 for him, she'll be winning. She'll be winning the belt for him. It'll be clear, but she'll go through and smash this girl tonight. And I'm just a Kayla Harrison fan, so I'm excited to see it. What about you? Your guys' thoughts?
Go ahead, Kyle, because I honestly don't know much about PFL, but I know Fabricio Werdum, he's the Fader killer, so I'll ride Fabricio, I suppose. But I initially thought you guys were talking about the old IFL. That's what I thought of, the old Ben Rothwell, the team format MMA days from like 15 years ago, which I loved the IFL.
I remember the IFL.
PFL sounds nothing like that. So go ahead, Kyle, talk PFL.
Well, for our wrestling fans, they'll remember the announcer as it's the beautiful Lillian Garcia as their ring announcer. On top of that, PFL has got a bunch of signings over there, Priest. You just had the debut of Anthony Pettis in their first event. Lance Palmer's over there. You got Bubba Jenkins over there. You've got, Chris Camozzi that fought in the UFC over there. You've got, right? Yeah, they've got a lot of guys and girls from the UFC over there. Carissa Shields, the boxer from here in Detroit, is signed to PFL and is going to fight in June. So they've got a lot of names. As far as to answer your question, Corey, when it comes to Kayla Harrison, I was really surprised. Like, I didn't know much about her before I started seeing like some of the lead up for the fight, and hearing the story about how she took in her sister's kids and now is a stepmom like that. Yeah. And, to take all that on top of being an undefeated fighter, and she just re-signed because, again, full disclosure, man, I'm a fan of this stuff just like you guys are. Again, for all of you guys joining the stream, thank you for joining, commenting here so I know who it is. I got a nice surprise for those who know who I'm talking about. But anyways, with Kayla Harrison, man, it's interesting because, you take on being a mom. They're not your kids. They're your sister's kids. And to be doing that while you're fighting is a crazy thing. It's and then she, like I said, she was at a new contract signing and she didn't know who really was left for her to fight over there in the PFL. So for her to get back there, she wants to win the season and then see what's going on with it. Like I said, man, it just I don't know. It's really interesting. And getting names like Anthony Pettis, Fabricio Verdum, and then you got names like Bubba Jenkins, who maybe people don't know yet, but at the same time, that was a great fight between him and Lance Palmer.
Yep. Quick, I do recall PFL. Once I did the quick Google search and saw Ray Sefo, I remember that because I watched, because the first year I didn't know it was still around, but they had like Jake Shields and I think John Fitch was there. Rick Story was in the welterweight tournament. Yep. I kind of remember this now. They're talking about it. I did not know they were still around, and I would have gone to my head if you would have said, what's the name of Ray Sefo's MMA promotion? I'd have had no idea, but I remember Ray Sefo starting this thing up and watching that inaugural 2000, was it 17, 18 when it started. So I'm out of the loop completely on where they're at now, but I do like that they've got a roster.
They've been doing real well with building the roster and stuff. They brought back a couple of the returning guys from the big thing that affected them was, of course, COVID, like everybody else, right? Like last year, they weren't able to run the season whatsoever. So they didn't even bother putting on like any like fill-in events or anything like that. And I feel like that's where they kind of missed the ball in my eyes, was at least like once they seen that the UFC was able to do it, they're affiliated with ESPN as well. They got the money and backing and stuff behind them just as well. Maybe, of course, not to the degree of a UFC, but they definitely, like, if you've watched their production levels and stuff, the rosters, let alone that they're able to draw in and stuff, you can tell they have some backing behind them. And I feel like they just kind of missed the ball with having to completely just cut off all events last year. But with that being said, Rory McDonald.
They've looked good so far.
Yeah, they've looked good, man. Honestly, they've been really entertaining. I've always wished, as a big MMA fan like I am, that there was something consistent during the week that could break up the monotony. Once in a while, you'll get Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. Those are always fun. Yet again, break up the monotony. Or you'll get like the Bellators and stuff that'll run on a Friday and stuff. But it's just too infrequently. And that's with the PFL. They're doing this also season bracketed. So it's like they take a month on, where they're on every week, and then they take a month off, and then take a month on. And it's good. It breaks up the monotony of the week. I really am enjoying what I'm seeing with PFL so far.
Well, after we get off the air, I'm going to have to check out PFL and see what's next. But before we jump into AEW Blood and Guts, tonight's show is brought to you by Weed Guys Fried Chicken, where you can strike out 25 times but still end up with a winner just because you got a home run. So for those of you who are watching, fuck you too. Anyways, AEW Blood and Guts. Priest, what'd you think about it?
We talking about the whole show? We talking about the match? Where are we at here?
I mean,
just overall.
What were your high points of the show?
Want to know?
Oh, yeah, what were your high points of the show? Or was there anything that stuck out that you didn't like out?
Oh yes, of course. Listen to Ramblings of a Grappleman tomorrow morning, Elite Edition, for a full hour plus breakdown of my full thoughts on Blood and Guts. But for the sake of knock out the 3 counts here, and I appreciate you guys having me on very much. I don't want to bore your fans here with too much detail, a lot of nitpicking here, but the highlight of the show for me, there was the number one thing I said on my show was the first 15 minutes of Blood and Guts match was fucking awesome. The first 15 minutes up until Jericho got in the ring, that match was fucking awesome. And I was loving every second of it. great story, great intensity, good violence, everything you want out of a War Games. And then the biggest problem that this show had, this biggest problem that this show had was, without a shadow of a doubt, their production. They shot themselves in the foot, and maybe it would help if AEW had production meetings and could get this shit together, because the overall flow of the show, the overall stories that they're telling, they run into each other. A lot of mishmash booking, but at the end of the day, you cannot end your show with that type of production. It's the same thing that happened with the exploding ring match. Just the production, and it's no secret. The guy who is doing production and the directing of AEW is Keith Mitchell. He was also the guy there through WCW, and he was there through a majority of TNA. So these companies all have the same problem. They all have lackluster main storyline angled production things that they fail on. They deliver great wrestling and they deliver great wrestling content, but when it comes to television production, they lack. And that's my takeaway from Blood and Guts. I thought overall, very, very good show. I love the beginning of Blood and Guts. I liked the angle with Darby Allin and Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, and then the announcement of Miro being the guy to take him on next week. Loved all that. Loved the return of technique by Taz. Loved the intensity that Cody and QT had. Loved the finish to that match. Like how they did the swerve, and Ogogo is going to be the student to build the angle around with the star. Cody does a great job putting his visuals for video packages into everything he touches. The opener was, it was okay. Kenny Omega not coming out with all the championships to me was a problem. Having Nakazawa wear the AAA title and the 2 TNA titles would have been much better if Kenny Omega came out with all of them and then handed those other belts off to Nakazawa to hold. Those are little visual cosmetic things that I have pet peeves with. That whole segment with Kenny Omega maybe cut the best promo of his career last night. However, it was overshadowed by questionable booking and decision making with Pac and Orange Cassidy being the guys there. I know I'm rambling here. This is what I do on my podcast.
You're all good. You're all good. Like I said.
The 4-way tag match, complete waste of television time, just bad booking all around that. You've gave it away the previous week with SCU going over, and then why are you going to take 3 teams down with them here just to set up a match next week with SCU and the Bucks that everybody saw coming when you could have slow built this thing all the way up to Double or Nothing? Then you get Jon Moxley looking like a half-ass comedy character and the beginning of the show, and he gets his ass kicked and he gets laid out. What kind of baby faces? Why are the fans supposed to cheer for Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston when they get their ass kicked by 5 guys every week, and none of the other baby faces in the back, they have no other friends that want to come try to help them? It gets old at some point. So why are the fans going to cheer for them if they have no friends? AEW, just the EVPs all do their own thing, and their blueprints are all over it, and it's evident with what I like and what I don't. But go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry. I was
to play devil's advocate, though. Like, I personally like Kingston and Mox together for the dynamic of that team, right? I didn't really understand that match last night to have him face Kenny Omega with Nakazawa, because it was like, what the hell? And then Omega walked out, so that part didn't really make sense. On that part, I completely agree. As far as the Blood and Guts match, I thought the match itself was dope. I thought all of the guys in there really beat the shit out of each other. You know, I think it was a match that really made MJF. It really gave MJF a chance to shine, obviously, with having that visual at the end too on the top of the cage. But again, like you said, on that fall when Jericho fell off the cage, man, the way they did that, where he went through that, whatever that was, the stage or whatever.
It's the same thing that WWE does. It's just the way it's shot. It's the way it's produced.
But that's what I'm saying. For it to look that way, it takes a lot of the oh shit factor.
And the fact that Jericho's calling spots to MJF, they've got a tight camera shot of him pulling the blade out of his wrist and him nicking his own head. They're going to picture-in-picture during Wardlow and Jake Hager's entrances. It was just the most poorly put together production when the match itself and the talent involved fucking tore it up. The first 15 minutes of the match is the best shit AEW has done. Dax and Sammy Guevara tore it up. Cash did his thing. The fucking crowd was going ape shit when Ortiz came in the ring. Then they did it again when Santana came in the ring because it was built beautifully. Those guys worked their ass off just for the production and the director of AEW to fuck them over and take away from all the hard work that the talent did. And not saying that they killed the match, because I still love the match. At the end of the day, it's still a very, very good match.
I was going to say, because overall, I would say, other than the way
production.
the finish got fucked up, I mean, the match itself was good.
Why were there no? Why when it came down to Jericho and MJF on top of the cage, you got 8 dudes in the ring and not one camera shot to them? Bad production. Bad production. You could have avoided a lot of the bad production on top of the cage with simple, quick shot to the ring here. Oh, look at this. Dax has Sammy Guevara's face up against the cage. Oh, look what's happening with Wardlow and Ortiz. Look what's happening with Santana and Spears. Look what's happening with Cash and Hager. Oh, let's go back to the top. MJF's now got the diamond ring on his hand, and you could have cut out all of that gaga bullshit, but they wanted to get – how many times did they have to get a zoom in of MJF's bloody face at the end there? They didn't once show the guys down in the cage. Those other 8 guys got forgotten, and part of it's Chris Jericho's ego and the fact that there's no production meeting, so Jericho probably told Keith Mitchell, hey, this is where the match is ending, so the cameras were just on that the whole time. But the other part of it falls on the whoever's running the camera cues and the camera calls in the back. I don't know if that's all Keith Mitchell or not. Could be TK, who knows? But they need to have better communication to say you're hurting the flow of this match and taking away from it. But again, I love the match. I'm just very passionate about War Games. It's like my favorite thing in pro wrestling, and the talent was not at fault here. The problems that AEW have is the referees are terrible. Half the talent doesn't understand the rules of pro wrestling, which buries the referees, and the referees aren't good enough to get themselves out of it. And then third of all, it's the production crew. The commentary last night, fucking best commentator show AEW's had. Love the commentary last night. Excalibur, I may finally turn the corner on the guy. I've been probably one of his biggest critics out there, and last night he killed it. JR on point, Shivani on point. The commentary team was awesome. The talent was all working hard. Take that 4-way match out. Take the production crap out of AEW, and it's a 10-star show.
I think they got a lot of growing pains with that stuff. There was also something to be said for, and Corey, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. So say you and I went to a wrestling show, right? There was a lot of stuff on Twitter talked about how the first hour of Blood and Guts was on the screens. So the people that were there didn't get to see the first hour live. Now, I'm also hearing that it said right on the tickets that the first hour of Blood and Guts was going to be pre-recorded. But, man, that would suck to watch that whole first hour. But then again, it's not something that hasn't been done before when you think about, like, WrestleMania 1.
2.
Yeah, or no, WrestleMania 2. You had it in the 3 different places. So you had the first hour in Chicago, then you had the 1 hour in New York, and then, so you had
which
people
was done
watching it
before that at Starrcade 85, actually, that nobody ever talks about.
Right. Well, either way, that's my whole point. I mean, it's not like it's something that hasn't been done, but I feel like in 2021, that's not something that goes over very well with fans.
No, I didn't know they did that until today, until I was recording, actually. I was live when I found that out.
Well, everybody's so used to the fact. I mean, look at us. Like we run a steady show and stuff like that. But look, the simple fact is, you can tune into us live and be watching as we're actually recording it. And I feel like for them to do that, even if it was just a live feed that they said it was a live feed or something like that, that would have been better than just coming out and saying it was a full-on tape delay, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, maybe that's why I mentioned that on my podcast too. Is maybe that's why the commentary was so tight, because they had a chance to fix some flubs. Doubt it, because they don't do that for the tape shows. Or maybe they were calling it live off the screens and they didn't already have it pre-recorded also. Who knows? But the fact they did that was surprising to me, For the simple fact that like you have people probably staring at these two rings in the cages. Now, from a production standpoint, I understand why they would have probably done that and tape them the week before because they don't know how long Blood and Guts is going to go. They don't know. They want to be able to cut corners and things like that to cram this all into their show as they're building to Double or Nothing. And then also to see how the setup is going to go with the two rings, with the matches in the rings, filming how that's going to look. They can get a week in advance filming of it and then shoot the shots to get everything set up. But I thought it was strange because they had plenty of time between matches with Omega's promo and Miro's promo, which I understand were live, to have built the cage. But I'm sure that's the only reason they didn't do it was because the cage took too long to build.
From somebody who's not a regular wrestling fan, that double ring inside the cage was an interesting look, man. When I first seen that, I was like, wow, that's some next level shit. You don't necessarily see that too often. And then like you seen like the slams in between when they would throw them over the rings and into the other ring and stuff. It was that stuff was pretty cool. That stuff was pretty cool.
Well, that's the thing, Corey. That's an old school thing. Like you talk about Tony Khan, it's notorious that he's an old school wrestling fan. So that was a thing that they were doing back in the '80s with Flair and the Horsemen versus the Road Warriors and Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff, and you've got. And they would beat the living dog shit out of each other. If you guys are watching, if you ever watched any of the War Games matches, comment them in the comments. Do
you have a favorite War Games, Kyle? Well, you think War Games 92 has been the year of 1992 changed my life as a pro wrestling fan, as a 9-year-old young man. I was 9 and my favorite match of all time is Bret Hart and British Bulldog SummerSlam 92. Dangerous Alliance is my favorite faction of all time. That War Games was Dangerous Alliance against Sting Squadron. Loved that War Game. Still holds up to this day as one of the better ones.
For me in particular, it would be any of the ones with the Horsemen versus the Road Warriors and Dusty, just because I've always been a Road Warriors fan. Even though they were long before my time, it was actually one of the few teams that me and my dad would bond over to because my dad, Corey can tell you from when we were younger, he didn't look it by the time you saw him, Priest, but my dad used to be a power lifter, right? So he was always a fan of the big muscled up guys, whoever it was, and with him being real close with Rhino, like I say, he used to give me a hard time when I first started fighting. So he always liked the big muscled up guys. So when he sees the Road Warriors, he's like, yeah, those guys used to beat the shit out of people. So, you know what I mean? Like, and I have grown to become such a fan of the Four Horsemen that those matches to me were awesome. But I have to say, the ones that they've done in NXT in recent times, I feel like there's a different vibe, obviously, because of the time difference and it's newer and that kind of thing. But I have to say, where I would rank them, I don't know. But the newer ones, I got to say, have been pretty damn good.
Yeah, NXT, there was only one that I didn't care for with the women. Might have been the first women's one and they also did one where it was like 3 teams, didn't they? That was the bad WCW one had 3 teams. I think
they had
one had 3 teams.
Yeah,
this last one was good with McAfee's team in the Undisputed Era. That one was. I
gotta say, McAfee did really well for that being his first match and it to be in a War Games match.
Second match.
Okay, second match.
McAfee's off. There's nothing Pat McAfee does that's bad. I've never seen him do anything bad in my entire life. No, he's gold with everything he touches. Go ahead, Corey.
I was just gonna say he in like all of the sports personality spectrum of people, he is my absolute favorite at this moment, man. He just like you said, man, he hits home runs on everything, it seems like. His show is pure gold. Even if you're just watching just like the clips he posts on YouTube and stuff, it's real good, like for him being a new journalist to like the sports media world and stuff, his ability to ask questions on the spot in this like comedic, like, hey, it's a real question and that we really need to know the answer to this, but also like ha ha ha, like way is like it's so perfect, especially with a lot of the athletes and stuff he has on, man.
Yeah.
It's just, he really does. He's somebody I actually would strive to like mold myself towards, I guess you could say, when it comes to the podcast and stuff like that.
Oh, and yeah, he's a huge positive influence too. Like just for your mental health, when you watch Pat McAfee show and you feel good, and he's self-made dude, and just. But also what he's able to do with those interviews, like the Michael Chandler one. This is fighting show. Michael Chandler and McAfee had never met. Their first conversation was just dynamite, and he has Stipe on a lot, and just. It's whenever he has fighters on, he brings out a different side of a personality from them because he's an athlete from another world that a lot of times you don't see these fighters get when they're doing MMA related shows. So it is awesome when McAfee draws that out with the fighters. He's done it with the wrestling for a long time now.
And he's doing a good job on commentary on SmackDown too, man.
That's one thing I was going to ask you guys, like, honest opinion. Is he like, because I haven't watched any of his episodes since he's made it onto the commentary team. How is he holding up?
He's doing excellent. Yeah, he did a great job, especially with that Reigns and Bryan match from last Friday. He did everything you're supposed to do as a commentator for that match. And it came across genuine, came across as raw emotion. He added to that match. He did not take away, and was that was for a guy who's commentated a little bit of football, a little bit of that. And it just shows you how, like, Michael Cole gets such a bad rap, but Michael Cole's so fucking good. I've been swearing a lot on your guys' show, so I apologize. But Michael Cole's so good and doesn't get respect he deserves. Kind of like Joe Buck in baseball. Joe Buck is excellent at what he does. These guys are around for a long time because they know how to commentate. They're not appealing to hardcore fans. They're appealing to that casual viewer, and they do such a good job of that. And Cole has done a good job of setting McAfee up to succeed. And McAfee's every time he's getting Cole setting him up, he's crushing it. So I think he's doing a fantastic job. But Kyle, you're looking at it through a different set of eyes than I might be. So what are your thoughts?
I don't know, man. So McAfee is very entertaining to me, and he looks like he's genuinely having fun. And the thing is, he's always said that he's a genuine fan of it. And now that he's had his time in the ring, he can genuinely say that he can respect, what's going on in the ring. So I think he's doing a great job. I've had no issue with Pat's commentary or what he's done in the ring. Hell, I'd like to see him finish his business over there in NXT if he can. Although, I mean, the Undisputed Era, is disbanded now. So I don't know who he would go over there to go mess with. But overall, man, I liked it. There's a lot of things that are going to be interesting to see coming up in wrestling, just to see what happens when a lot of these names who were let go, where they end up going, and what can happen once that 90-day no compete is up. So in the meantime, I thought overall it was a good show from AEW.
Oh, definitely.
NXT, I thought, did a really good job. I love Karrion Kross as champion. I think Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell winning the tag team titles is a good thing, because to me they're more of a natural tag team. But at the same time, I think overall, I mean, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to really say that NXT has the better women's division all the way around. I would say they arguably have got the best women's division in wrestling right now. So their tag team champions and their women's champion, like I said, to me, they've got great competition on that end.
Oh, there's no doubt about it with NXT women, but the tag belts were pointless to even bring in for the women, I felt like, because like they have the WWE women's tag team champions that were barely getting any TV time, and they could have used it down in NXT for a while and just used the same tag belts. But they've already had they've only been around since like January, haven't they? And this is their third set of champions. Things are hot potato.
Yeah, man, they haven't had anybody that's had any type of long reign because the champions that got it inaugurally lost it that night.
Yeah, that was what, Dakota and Raquel.
It was Dakota and Raquel.
And then Shotzi and Ember, and now it's already on Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. And
plus, you got to still see how that Dexter Loomis thing's going to play out. But dude,
yeah,
I
honestly didn't see all NXT. I just saw clips.
I gotta say though, and shout out to the guy because I got to kick it with him a little bit when we were in there. We were out in Florida with Mega Ran, but Swerve Scott versus Leon Ruff was a really good match, man. They beat the shit out of each other. They beat the shit out of each other. I think with those vignettes and everything that we've seen with that, I'm really interested to see what they're gonna do with Swerve and Leon Ruff, dude. That dude can take an ass kicking. That's. I
remember their two performances at Takeover was one of the things that stood out to me. Actually, was their specific beginning entry into that. What was it? The
Gauntlet.
Yeah, the Gauntlet match. That was one of the things that actually stood out to me on the weekend. So I'm glad to hear they ran that as an independent match. Since
yeah, and Leon Ruff, I mean, he's been around for a few years doing his thing, and he does what he does well. He doesn't have a much bigger ceiling than where he's at right now, in my opinion. I'm not saying he's peaked yet, but his window isn't as big. Swerve Scott, I mean, Shane Strickland he can go. He can tear it up. He was having some phenomenal stuff in Lucha Underground. He was doing some phenomenal stuff in MLW. So he's finally getting opportunities now at NXT TV to showcase what he can do. And he's a guy who can, given the opportunity, he can shine. He can rise above. But he also can be his own worst enemy because he's a guy who, much like a lot of talent in wrestling right now, they're kind of lost with what their character is, and their promos to their character to the wrestling match bell to bell, they all don't sync up. And that's unfortunately, in my opinion, something that Swerve Scott has to connect those dots.
You don't think that those vignettes helped with that though?
I thought
that vignette really kind of like pointed the path for where we're going. I really kind of got the vibe out of that. Like, look, you know, I may not have been the name on the tip of your tongue for a while, but wake up, pay attention, pretty much.
Definitely helped. And that's what I was alluding to. Like, he's been there for 2+ years now, and it's finally starting to come together for him. But he still, when that bell rings and he starts working, his work is still not following the character, the story, and that is still off a little bit. And that, to me, that's what takes me out of a lot of Young Buck stuff, is because their stuff doesn't sync up. And that's a pet peeve of mine with a lot of, and it's more on the indie talent that's getting TV time. They can be excellent performers. They can be great wrestlers. They can cut great promos. They can do all these things, but all the dots don't connect. And that's where you see the difference from like Kenny Omega right now. I'm not a big Kenny Omega fan, but right now he's connected all those dots, and he's doing some of the best stuff in his whole career because the way he's wrestling is matching his promos, which are matching his character, and it's all come full circle. And that's why he's on that next level from a lot of these other talents.
I agree with that. I think Swerve is starting to kind of put himself down that line now. Where
hopefully he has the talent, so hopefully he's able to, because he's got. I mean, like I said, Lucha Underground, him and Dante, was it AR Fox? They were tearing it up, and then in MLW, him and MJF had a really, really good match, and they had a really good story. So he's capable of so much more than he's been given at NXT. So he just got to keep maximizing his opportunities.
And one more time before you get out of here, man, as you saw there in the comments, Weed Guy's fried chicken, man, it's capable. Even with 25 strikeouts, you'll still hit a home run, you cheap sons of bitches. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled program.
One thing I want to pose you guys a question, because you had noted how he had been in NXT for a while, but he seems like he's at least getting active use there, right? And it seems like a lot of the guys that are getting the call up to the main WWE roster may not be getting the usage that he would at least be getting there. So I want to pose the question to you guys: what's more valuable, somebody being on NXT and getting actively used, or being on the main roster but not seeing the light of day? Like, what holds more weight in your guys' opinion? I mean, obviously everybody's shooting. Their main dream is to get to that roster, and you can't help what they choose to end up doing with you when you get there. So that's like the unfortunate thing about wrestling. But I'm still curious on that.
Post
All right, Priest,
pandemic,
you want to go first? Or
yeah, post pandemic, it's a little harder to answer that question. Pre pandemic, the simple answer was money. When you're in NXT, you're making entry level money, developmental. Not everybody. The majority of the people have their baseline contract, and when they are traveling on NXT house show loops, they're doing, like, when they would come to Michigan, they're doing what Royal Oak, getting 1,000 people roughly. Where when you're on WWE main roster, you're doing house shows. You're at LCA. Yeah, you're not selling it out, but you're still getting 7,000-8,000 people there. Plus, with that comes with more money. With the you're going to get more money with the sponsorships that are paying the WWE. A lot of guys will get re-signed to a WWE contract and not that entry level contract. There's a big bump in pay pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, without the house show travel, without the TV rights and the loops, well, I guess it's still the TV rights, but with a lot of the, it's more on like your creative freedom, if you will. So a guy a long time ago, now I don't know how he would still feel about this, but there was a 5-6 years ago, and this was probably 3 or 4 years after he'd been doing it, but a guy, Heath Slater, was famously for saying in the back, is like, hey, I work for WWE, I got a job, I'm on WWE, I'm making more money than I ever thought, I'm living my dream, I'm doing my thing. What they do with me on TV, they do with me on TV. I'm just going out there and doing the best I can to keep my job. But the creative outlet for him was, it wasn't there. So from a talent perspective, the performer's perspective, some of them probably would like to stay in NXT. I know, like, Aleister Black had asked to go back. Now he's getting his opportunity again on SmackDown, I think, is where they're running vignettes for him.
So
go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
So here's my thing with it, right? In my opinion, it would all depend on where you're at in your career, right? Because a guy like a Tommaso Ciampa, right? He's been in the game for a long time, whether it be Ring of Honor or wherever else. He's at a point, I would say, where he's making decent money. So at his point, it depends on, I want to be enjoying what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So I think it all depends on a case-by-case basis of what it is. Because with somebody like Ciampa and even Gargano, we know that they both said they don't want to go to the main roster. Like, flat out said, I don't want to go to the main roster. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Ciampa said he would retire if he went to the main roster.
Yeah, because there's no money. Those guys they're dead in the water if they go to the main roster. Because as talented they are as performers, and they're great wrestlers, they're great wrestlers. They're not great characters. They're not great. They're not someone that you can go to a multi-million-dollar sponsor and draw them in. Those guys they're not gonna headline WrestleManias. They can draw a couple thousand people, and they can put on some of the best wrestling matches you've ever seen, but they're not going to appeal to that broader audience, unfortunately for them.
I mean, there's a reason why Roman Reigns fits that mold completely and is
absolutely
on top for as long as he has been.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Brock Lesnar.
Yeah,
he's larger than life. I mean, whether he went to UFC, when he was doing his little stint in the NFL, no matter wherever Brock Lesnar went, money
people
followed.
Take notice where he's at.
So
yeah,
he's a star. Another question, since you brought up Brock Lesnar, and I never really thought about it from this angle, that must have propelled his WWE famous fandom, however you would want to put his notoriety in wrestling, when he went to the UFC and not only went there, but went there and won the UFC belt, was an active heavyweight champion, and then retired and came back to wrestling. Like, how did the wrestling fans view, like, I feel like that would be like, he's bona fide at this point. Like, you can't say
Brock
anything
Lesnar
about the man. Like,
Brock Lesnar was already made before he ever left wrestling, number one. But number two, when he came back after winning the UFC title, dude, every time Brock Lesnar's there, he's the biggest star in WWE.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact. There's a reason why and you can even see it. Like, you know how you look up.
Was it like that beforehand?
So Brock,
not to this level.
Did the UFC propel it? You know what I mean?
No,
I don't think it was to the same level. Once he won the UFC title, I feel like it took him to another step.
So it goes two ways here, right? So Brock Lesnar had a short run in wrestling from 2002 to 2004 with WWE. He did, in that time, he had a feud with The Rock and beat The Rock. He had a program with Hulk Hogan. He beat Hulk Hogan. So those guys passed the torch to Brock Lesnar. He main evented the first WrestleMania he was on. He main evented it. Went on last. 70,000 people in Seattle, Washington. So he drew. He was a household name. He was the biggest star in wrestling. The next year, they're at Madison Square Garden. Him and Goldberg was the most anticipated match. Wrestling fans turned on Brock Lesnar.
Because that match was fucking horrible.
Well, because of the way he left, and then he went to football. But when he left wrestling, he became a bigger star because he left wrestling while being the top guy. So he'd gotten all this attention in this, Eric Bischoff, controversy creates cash, friend of the show, right, Kyle?
Past guest of the show, multiple past guests.
So Eric Bischoff has always said controversy creates cash. So Brock Lesnar leaving wrestling, very controversial. The headlines he's grabbing for football, then he's going to get into fighting. He went and did the Inoki Boom Boom show, I believe, in 2007, was his first MMA fight. It was a Hong Dong Chow or whatever. He jack off punched his face in 30 seconds, and they didn't look like they'd hurt anybody. But when you think about the size of Brock Lesnar's hand and the strength that he has, that shit probably did really hurt.
Well, dude, he had a size 5X glove. I mean, the man's hitting you with fucking lunch pails. It's like the Hulk. Feed me more.
Yeah.
Feed me more. Oh, that's Ryback. Excuse me. Hold on a minute. Hold on, Ryback. Sorry.
So Brock then goes to the UFC, and he had most wrestling fans did not like Brock Lesnar, and they had no respect for Brock Lesnar. However, when he fought Frank Mir, every wrestling fan was watching, and at that time, I remember wrestling fans wanted to see him get his ass kicked, and there were other wrestling fans that wanted to see him win because it legitimized pro wrestling, even though the dude was a heavyweight collegiate champion before he was a pro wrestler. So it was a very mixed crowd, and then he had a great showing. Yes, he lost.
Well,
it was
that's because
booked.
if you weren't a wrestling fan, I feel like most people didn't know what Brock Lesnar's pedigree really was. They just saw him as the WWE guy and didn't realize that he was a national champion wrestler. And then when he went in there to the UFC, I mean, like I said, I was there. The way that man did what he did to Randy Couture, I mean, granted, yes, he was a lot bigger, and the size had something to do with it. But to do that to somebody like Randy Couture is nuts. Or even look at how he used his wrestling, even if it was in dire straits. The man got takedowns on pretty much everybody he fought.
Yep.
Everybody.
Well, that's the thing that when he made the transition that I was curious about is he was a collegiate wrestler, national champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And was highly regarded, but at the same point, he had done pro wrestling for a couple of years, had dabbled around with the NFL at that point, had kind of tiptoed his feet around in a couple different waters. So when he made his way into the UFC, I wasn't sure how much of the wrestling had still held hold.
Oh, it was
10 years in the past,
It was huge because that was their first $1 million show. Yeah. Brock Lesnar brought, Ultimate Fighter brought UFC to the mainstream, and then Brock Lesnar propelled them and was a big star, and then allowed other guys under that wing. The pre-fight promos, they became wrestling promos with a lot of guys. I mean, Tito Ortiz was doing it. A few guys were doing it before, but after Brock Lesnar, everybody elevated. Fighters started making more money. Brock Lesnar became a bigger star because he legitimized himself, but he isn't that star in the UFC without the pro wrestling, without that controversy.
Well, right, and that's why my answer to your question, Corey, was yes. Did he have a bigger star after he went to the UFC? But that's what I mean. Brock Lesnar had a star off rip when he went to the UFC.
His initial temperature was hot. There was
like when he went to the UFC. Understand that Brock Lesnar was at like the top when he went to fighting, but 110% when he went to the UFC and won the title and then defended the title a couple times. That's another thing you got to talk about. A lot of heavyweight champions have not defended the title. Brock Lesnar defended the title multiple times. Okay? And the thing is, the man showed that he would take an ass whooping too.
Shane Carwin.
He took an ass whooping and still beat Shane Carwin.
Yeah. He let Shane tire himself out by punching him in the face. It was a great strategy on Brock's behalf. It really was.
Hey man, call it what you want, call it what you will, but dude, I mean the thing is,
he got the dub.
Nobody can say the man was, a lot of people I feel like thought that he was going to be a priss because he came from the wrestling world. You can't say that man wouldn't get in there and bang because he took a damn beating and stayed in there.
How you had said that was the UFC's first $1 million buy. Just look at the simple fact of how quick they were willing to do the DC versus Brock thing last year or the year before that when he beat Stipe for the first time. They had him in the octagon. They cut the promo. They were shoving each other, mics in each other's face, and that's because Dana still respects the fact that he knows Brock is a draw, always will be, and there's no taking that away from that man. And
was it UFC? Was it UFC 200 he came back and fought on? He came back and fought a few years ago.
Yeah, I believe that was his last.
It was UFC 200 because they had that ugly ass yellow canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was in between contracts this last time, he showed up at the event and him and DC were pushing each other around and shit. And I'm not gonna lie, I seen it in the octagon. I'm like, that would be fun watching fucking DC's round ass trying to take Brock down or try to fucking outbox Brock. That would be a good match. Like, there's nothing you can take away from Brock, man. He is the real deal, 110% in the.
Could you imagine? Think about this though. Before we jump on to, since we talk about the star power that other things are bringing to it, that brings us a great way to talk about the crazy show that's going to be Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. The funny thing about that whole thing is, like, could you imagine if somehow Brock Lesnar ended up in, say, Bellator with the way that they have, like, all the old names and stuff? Brock Lesnar, I still feel like murders half of the heavyweights in that division.
Well, how old is Brock at this point?
43, I believe.
43, 44.
I didn't know he was that old at this point.
Well, you got to realize when he got into WWE, he was only 20 or 21.
Well, yeah, he won the NCAA. He was 26 when he won the championship in 2002.
Okay.
So
I got my timeline off. But either way,
he was 25, so he's 44.
He didn't stay wrestling then. He was in college for a long period then. If he was
Well, he won the NCAA heavyweight championship, I think, in 99 or 2000. So he was like 22 when he.
Well, and then he got signed because
WWE.
Well, you got to remember, even.
I was like, man, he was in school for a long time.
No, he won the NCAA heavyweight championship. He was 21, 22, just like a senior year.
Well, too, but you also got to remember when he got to WWE, he was in OVW for a while, so it wasn't like he went right to TV.
He was only in OVW for like 9 months.
Right, but I'm saying he still was. So he got signed and like he debuted in 2003. He got there in 2002 is what I mean.
No, he got signed in 2001 and he was debuted in April of 2002.
Right. Okay. Right. You're right. But my point being, it's like Brock Lesnar from the time he came in, man. I think WWE knew he had the blue. They had the blue chip there.
When JR and Jerry Briscoe signed him, the way they introduced him to Vince is, we have the guy who's going to main event your next. No, we got the guy who's going to main event your next 5 WrestleManias. And then Vince had saw him once before and said, "Holy shit, yeah, this guy's going to main event my next 5 WrestleManias." And it's the same thing that they said when they had Cena. This guy's going to main event WrestleManias.
Yeah, man. It's
just know.
interesting because now they say they got Brock Lesnar 2.0 down there in the Performance Center. So we'll see. We'll see if this kid has can live up to the monikers that they're putting on this kid.
Good athlete, looks like him with the University of Central Florida as an offensive lineman. He's a good athlete, has the talent, but Brock Lesnar has that thing you can't teach.
He's got it.
Exactly. He has a certain aura about him, and he, unfortunately for this kid whose name is escaping me, it used to come right off the tip of my tongue. But Parker Stevenson, is that right?
Yep. Parker, yep. Look at you. Man, that's why you got to check out Ramblings of a Grappleman, man. Quick like whip.
I don't think the last name's Stevenson. I think it's like French or something.
Parker Bordeaux.
That's it.
Parker Bordeaux, see the tag team. That's why you got to stay tuned here to Knockouts and Three Counts. If you haven't done so, hit that motherfucking subscribe button.
That's the big thing with Brock, right? Is like from the outside in, that name. Like, how many people do you know that are named Brock other than the freaking Pokemon gym trainer? Like, that's the only Brock.
Don't you forget about Brock Larson from WEC, sir.
Okay, well, that being said, it's such the perfect name for like a big brooding like monster of a man, like Brock,
big corn-fed boy.
Yeah, like it's the perfect name for you to like go in there and steal headlines. Like it's just like how you were saying his name escaped you. Like all shout outs to all the Parkers in the world, but Parker isn't quite as fitting as a Brock. A Brock is just like a hard, brash name that's just like. Even the name, it just symbolizes the person. I feel like it fits it perfect.
He checks everybody. He's a generational talent. I mean, like that's really what it is. And right now it's hard to say who the next big star in pro wrestling is going to be because WWE's not. They're trying to sign guys who have that potential, but they're also trying to not launch them to the moon because Austin, The Rock, and Brock. Their three biggest stars coming out of that era, none of them had more than a 5-year run on top.
So we need to keep our eyes out for another Ock. Okay.
That's why John Cena is so special because he was on top for so long. Roman Reigns is already about to pass Austin's run on top. I mean, it's a different era. It's a different time. It's hard to find stars, legitimate stars.
Well, quick transition. You bring up once in a lifetime generational talents and stuff. I think we might be seeing one in the UFC light heavyweight division with freaking Yuri Prochazka. I don't know if you guys were able to watch that fight from last week, but good Lord, what he was able to do to a huge Dominic Reyes that looked absolutely incredible in there himself. He was able to land a lot of counter shots, was circling out, light on his feet. Had a couple moments where he almost had him, hit him with a solid up kick that even Yuri in the interview after the fact said he was kind of out for a couple seconds and woke up on top of Dominic. So it's just, man, that was a fucking war. I don't even know how else to describe it. And it left Dominic Reyes face down on the mat. It was crazy. That was a crazy fight night main event. I can't wait to see him fight again. I hope he fights again before the title bout that they're speculating that he's going to be in next. I hope we can see him sooner than that because the title bout's not even scheduled till September. But what was your guys' thoughts on that performance, man? That was nuts.
So, yeah, I saw it, dude. And I got to say, that was one of the most creative knockouts I can remember seeing in recent memory. Because I've seen somebody hit somebody with multiple elbows when you grab them in the tie clung and you hit them with multiple elbows. But to hit him with the elbow and then spin back through and hit him with that back elbow, man, bro, that was dirty. And like you said, to do that to a Dominic Reyes, man, that was savage, man. It'll be interesting to see what he does next, but I mean, it was definitely a savage thing. It was a rough night for us in the office as well because, I mean, our boy Cody Stamen lost to Merab Davishvili, but yeah, man, that knockout was nasty.
That was another incredible fight. I know, shout out to past guests of the show, Cody. But I mean, Rob came in there to fight that night, man. He looked like he's really stepped up his striking to another level, and I feel like that's kind of what helped him win the fight, is because he didn't have to rely so much on his wrestling that he has in every fight that he's ever had in the UFC. He just looked like he really stepped up his striking game that one level. But striking standout on that card, man, Giga Chikadze. The way he was able to put Cub Swanson out in like 45 seconds with that liver shot. Ooh, featherweights better watch out, man. I don't know who they match him up with next. I feel like anybody in that top like 7 range is an incredible matchup. I would really love to see like him versus Yair, him versus Abit, him versus the Calvin Cater. I mean, even him versus like a Max Holloway. As much as I would hate to see Max go in there with somebody that he might lose against, man, Giga looked like he was on the next level that night. He looked so focused and just on the ball. He really did, man.
Fucked my parlay up before it ever even got started. So, yeah. It didn't even make it to Cody's fight. And then the cherry on top was Dominic Reyes taking a dirt nap. So, yeah, my parlay went to shit. Mission Pro Wrestling was dope. And
do they give you anything if you get all 3 of the parlay wrong? Do you get something on that end?
Yeah, big fuck you. Yeah, they give you a big fuck you, but shout out to Mission Pro Wrestling. We're not giving them a big fuck you. That was a great show. Shout out to past guests of the show, Marty Bell. Shout out to past guest show, the weapon of ass destruction, Double D Rose. She did her thing and got the dub. You'll be seeing her return. Devin got himself a motherfucking bonnet. Priest, I know you saw the pictures. Devin got himself a motherfucking bonnet.
I was very happy for Devin. That's something he's been waiting for a long time.
To accessorize, going from the Kangol to the bonnet, man. I
love that pink one. It looks so incredibly cute.
I know. So we're gonna have to bring on the woman behind the bonnet, Miss Roche Chanel, onto the show to talk about it. Like I said, we've got plenty coming to you guys, as well as maybe a Mission Pro Wrestling champion. Hey, you got to hit that subscribe button so you stay tuned and see what is going to come from us next. Also, make sure you check out Tuesday's episode with Bobby Nasty Nash ahead of his fight May 28th for XFC. I don't know, man. I saw the fights, but yeah, dude, it fucked up my parlay horrible. It fucked up my parlay horrible. It was almost like I had some of that Weed Guys fried chicken. Except I didn't get the home run at the end.
So we got another crack this weekend, right?
What'd you say?
Got another crack for a parlay this weekend.
I don't know that I'll be betting this weekend, but
before we close out the show, that's one thing I do want to get your guys' thoughts on. I like the MMA Twitter and MMA fan base as a whole has kind of really let down the fact that this isn't Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw this weekend. But I myself...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, TJ suffered a big cut on his eyebrow. It's gonna be tentatively rescheduled, but they haven't released a date or anything. So,
did he get in a match with Nick Gage?
Huh?
Did he get in a match with Nick Gage?
No, he got in a...
Oh, just asking.
Matt, it looked like, and ate Matt. That's what it looked like. But either way, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this still 5 round, but late minute replacement of the Karate Hottie and Marina Rodriguez. It seems like the MMA world is hating on this as the main event so bad. But me, myself, I always love watching Michelle Watterson in a fight, especially when you give her 5 rounds to work. I feel like that's when she's at her best. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that before we kind of reach that point.
Priest, I'll let you go first.
Well, this fight was already supposed to be on the card, though, right?
Yeah, it just got bumped to main event.
That's what I thought.
No, it was not supposed to be on the card. It wasn't even an announced fight. This came completely out of the blue. And They had plenty.
I could swear this fight was already booked, bro.
I promise you it was not. I've been watching interviews all week on it. I promise you guys it was not. Michelle Watterson, you can watch her interview that she did on the desk actually today, where she brings up the fact that, yeah, she got the call like Tuesday or something of last week. And then
was supposed to be on another card?
It was,
Was supposed to be on another card and they bumped it up?
No, it wasn't even supposed to be on another card. She didn't
even
have a fight in the books.
Wow.
They must already been talking with her about a fight or something.
Both of them had to have been in a camp, though. But hey, that's exciting.
They moved it. It's instead of being their regular 115s, they're both fighting at 125 for the short notice.
Hey, I mean, that kind of throws a wild card. Watterson has the more experience of the two, which in a fight like this, you kind of lean towards experience when there's not a full camp behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Reyes, is that who she's fighting? Or is it Rodriguez?
Rodriguez.
Marina Rodriguez.
Reyes is fighting.
I think it's Rodriguez because it's Brazilian, but I could be.
Gotcha. No, Reyes is fighting Angela Hill, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rodriguez, okay.
She's the one that actually beat Amanda Ribas in her last fight. She was the one that put her down with strikes.
I mean, she's a younger, more explosive fighter, better athlete. If this fight draws out, I think that's what it's going to come down to. If it can get a little deeper, I think it'll favor her, but she's got to survive. And Rodriguez is very explosive. However, from what I can recall from picturing the same fighter, like she's not known for finishing fights. I think she's had if it's the fighter I'm thinking of, she's had a couple split decisions, and a lot of close fights. So I'm going to lean Watterson here because I think it's going to go the distance, and I think that'll favor the more experienced fighter.
Look here, anytime the Karate Hottie is fighting, I am here for it. I've been a fan of Michelle Watterson since she was on Bully Beatdown, just like our homie from here in Detroit, the Detroit superstar Darren Cruikshank. But in this one, I'm definitely going with Michelle Watterson. I didn't realize that it had gotten materialized out the blue, but hell, what a call to get. You're in the main event, kid. Come make that cash real quick. Because they got to be making some extra money since it's the main event. So, I mean, like I said, kudos to them. I got Michelle Watterson in this fight. I think her experience is going to be a little bit too much for Miss Rodriguez. Let's talk about the other fight that was supposed to happen here. In brief fashion, I'd like to know what both of your thoughts are on this whole Diego Sanchez situation. Priest, do you know what happened with it?
I guess I don't know what happened with it. I know Diego Sanchez was supposed to fight.
So the Cliff Notes version of what happened was it was supposed to be Donald Cerrone versus Diego Sanchez.
Right.
When they went to go do all the pre-fight stuff and all that, Diego's manager started asking for a bunch of crazy stuff, and they asked for Diego Sanchez's medical, which I can't blame them. That's something.
They didn't just ask for his medicals, though. They asked for every single piece of medical documentation that.
Right. I understand. I was going to get to that.
Going back from his Tough 1 performance all the way through his UFC career, because they were looking to try to mount some type of legal, ramification against the UFC. Is essentially how it looked from the outside in.
And on top of that, man, there was also, so he did like a 40-minute interview after he got released, basically saying that he thought that the UFC was going to put a hit out on his head, saying that he thought the UFC was going to kill him. And
that's CTE.
Yeah, man, it was wild, man. And he made some valid points in some things. He's like, I've been a guy who fought for you guys for 15 plus years. And you don't look out like that. There were things in there of what, right?
He shouldn't be fighting. Diego Sanchez has been in wars for 15 years. It's not like Diego Sanchez has gone out there and had he's probably had less than 10 fights in his whole career that have ended within a minute where he's barely taken a punch. Diego Sanchez goes out there and puts on fight of the night. It was like him and Clay Guida, they both have hit in the head so many times. I mean, it's sad to see, but he was always a little nuts. Like he was nuts from. I mean, you kind of got to be a little crazy to get in there as much as he did, but he was always a little wacky. And I mean, I feel like the fact that I was shocked when I saw Diego Sanchez was going to fight, and then when I saw he was fighting Cowboy, I was like, oh, these guys used to train together, the old Winklejohn boys. They're going to get in there and bang. And this is not good for either of them because Cowboy, I feel like, is kind of in the same boat. This guy's been hitting the head a lot. I wouldn't have known who to bet on in that fight because I'm like, one punch could end it for either dude. Who's Cowboy fighting now, or is he off the show too?
No, that's why I brought it up. He got a replacement. It's going to be him versus Alex Morano.
You guys were both talking at the same time.
Alex Morano, the guy that Pettis beat on his way out.
Okay.
If that makes you any more familiar.
God, these guys, because isn't who's Neil Magny fighting?
He's got
Geoff Neal.
Yep, it's going to be Jeff
and
Neal
versus
Neil
Didn't
Magny.
he also fight?
He's just now coming off the main. I think he actually did fight Morano. He's coming off the main event.
Yes, he did.
Wonderboy.
Yes, he did.
That's the fight I was picturing was Jeff Neal and Morano when you said Morano's name. Yeah, I mean, at least they didn't put a killer in there with Cowboy. That's a good. I don't know. I couldn't pick a winner in that one. I wouldn't trust betting on Cowboy at this point in his career.
Hey, I rock with Cowboy this way, so I'm going to go with Cowboy on this one. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I understand that the man's been dinged up, but I've always been a Cowboy fan.
Big fan. I'm about betting on him, though. Big fan.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be placing any bets on these fights this weekend.
With my wallet. Yeah, I agree.
You know, the Magny Jeff Neal fight, though, that's a to me, that could main event this show. I mean, Neil Magny has been the gatekeeper for the top 5 for seemingly a decade.
Or even they have Gregor Gillespie versus Diego Fajeda on this card. That's
a good fight.
Like
and Gillespie's is Gillespie still like a top 5 contender?
I believe he's in the top 10, but I don't.
Or he must have lost his last fight.
Yeah, it was that Kevin Lee fight, and he hasn't had a fight since.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Nasty head kick.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he kicked his head right off his body. Okay. So he has not fought since then. Wasn't that in Detroit here? That was when fans were still. Wasn't that 2019? That might not have been Detroit.
It was.
That wasn't Detroit. Detroit was 2018.
He didn't fight all during COVID. And he was actually supposed to fight that Brad Riddell a couple weeks ago. I was actually really looking forward to that fight, but Brad Riddell had to pull out due to contact tracing with COVID.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, Magny and Jeff Neal, that'll just be a good fight. I mean, Magny has been a top 10 guy for literally since probably 2015. He had that 7-8 fight win streak, lost one, then went another 3-4 fight win streak, lost one, 2 or 3, lost probably 2. I mean, Neil Magny is just a guy. He's a gatekeeper, and Neil's up and coming. Like he's knocked some people out. I don't know where his record is in his last 5 fights, but dude's got to be right on the cusp of breaking to the next level. So that would be a fight that I'd want to see. And Neil Magny's getting a little long in the tooth. Hard to not assume that Neil finishes him. I like Magny too.
I know it's a hard fight yet again because watching all these interviews and all these media days and all this podcast and every single mic that gets shoved in these fighters' faces, man, you become a fan of these people. And when you get them squaring off against each other, like in this match in particular, both of these guys are awesome. I really don't want to see either one have to take a step back. I guess if I was to say I would rather see one have to maybe deal with a setback, it would be Jeff Neal. Just because of the simple fact he's a little younger in his career, where I feel like Neil Magny, especially getting dominated by Chiesa in his last fight.
Yeah, he needs this win.
He needs it. He really does. I feel like if he loses this one, he really loses a lot of that steam that you were just talking about. Because Neil Magny, he's got this thing about him where he's he doesn't necessarily seem dangerous in anything, but then he goes out there and just has these nights where he just looks like he could be a champ with just a couple different things added to his game. Just a couple small scoops of things added, and it would be night and day difference. And then other times, like that Chiesa fight, he was trying to clinch him the whole fight with somebody who was a way better wrestler than him instead of using his range and outboxing him. It's like he doesn't. I don't know if it's a mental lapse or something that's going on in the cage or in the strategy leading up to the fights or something, but it just sucks.
So with that being said, though, who do you think is going to win, though, Corey?
Like I said, I would rather see if one gets a setback, but I feel like Jeff Neal's got the difference here, and I feel like him coming off of that loss to Wonderboy Thompson, if I'm not mistaken, how you had alluded to his last 5, if I'm not mistaken, he's 4-1, other than that Wonderboy fight.
Yeah, because I thought he was killing people. He had some first round knockouts too in that 4-1.
I feel like he's gonna put Neil Magny in some spots he doesn't want to be. I really do.
Yeah. No, my take on Magny is, sorry, Kyle, I just want to get this in real quick about Magny. I think with Neil Magny is, I think he is that like a coach's dream fighter, and that he's not the best athlete. He's not the most talented guy out there, but he can execute a game plan, and he listens to his coaches, and that's why he's had so much success. Because when, like your point, Corey, when you watch him fight, it doesn't look like he's all that dangerous, but he'll go out there and just dominate some fights where you're like, where did this guy, like, he doesn't have that explosive to be like, he's not eye grabbing by any means, but he's so fundamentally sound. And I think he implements a strategy really well. And when he gets in there with a more talented fighter who also implements a good strategy and is a smart fighter, he just loses on that. That's my take on Neil Magny, is that he just lacks that athleticism and explosiveness. But he's a really smart, disciplined fighter. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
So I think Jeff Neal's going to win, but I don't know, man. I wouldn't sleep on Neil Magny at all, man. Something tells me that he could come in and pull this out his ass.
You can never sleep on him.
So, like I said, I'm if I'm picking, I'm going to pick Jeff Neal. But I could see him really pulling it out of his ass. Now, that being said, there's one other fight that we got to talk about this weekend before we get out of here. You got Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Saunders. That fight is back on after all the controversy that's happened. Now, we talked about it briefly on Tuesday. So, Priest, since you weren't with us on Tuesday, what are your thoughts on all the news this week about the argument about the difference in the 20-foot ring versus the 24-foot ring by the Billy Joe Saunders count?
I was confused by that because who wanted the bigger ring? Canelo?
So, no, Billy Joe Saunders wanted the bigger ring because with the way that Canelo fights, Canelo cuts off the ring. So having a smaller ring gives him less room to move.
Right, yeah, because that's why when I read I only read one article on it, and I was confused by it because I'm like, well, why would Canelo want the bigger ring? He's no. Out so fast.
They got there. I guess 24 was what was on the contract, and when they got there, there was a 20-foot ring.
Okay.
And Billy Joe, apparently what happened was, at some point when Canelo's camp is walking through the lobby of the hotel, Billy Joe Saunders' camp is all clapping and saying, you got to have a special ring, and straight up said, well, if you want to change the size of the ring, he said, fuck you, we can go home. And they were ready to leave because they said with the size of the ring that changed, the whole thing, which I can understand, especially in a fight with somebody like Canelo. Now, the size of the ring, I understood. The other stuff they were bringing up, like hand wraps and things like that, seemed a little petty. But all in all, man, I thought it just, like I said, the size of the ring made sense. I'm glad the fight's still on. Shout out to Canelo because Canelo is living up to his word. He said he wants to unify all the titles here. So we're going to see what happens. As far as what happens in the fight, I think Canelo is probably going to smash Billy Joe Saunders just like he's been smashing everybody else. But do you guys think that there was any real validity to, what are your thoughts on all the controversy with the ring size?
Well, there's validity in the sense that there really was a 20-foot when they agreed upon a completely different size. And whether that was Canelo's call or somebody in Canelo's camp or DAZN Boxing or whoever may be the, one at fault, I guess you could say in this regard, it still looks a little shisty, especially if you're a Billy Joe Saunders fan or Billy Joe Saunders yourself. I mean, that is kind of shisty. It is like we agreed upon one thing and you're presenting another when I'm already here prepared to go. Like this is that's a little bit of bullshit. Like you said, the rest of it's just kind of boxing. It is what it is with like the hand wraps, the gloves, the we need your shoes to be 1 inch pointed to the left and this one's 2 inches to the a lot of the rules are just dumb shit, but the rules with the actual size of the ring, I feel like that's a legitimate gripe. And especially to note, it's not just this fact of, oh, it's a Canelo fight. It's the Canelo fight. It's
for the title too. Like the other guy's bringing in a title too.
If you're Billy Joe Saunders and you were somehow able to pull off this upset, you now become arguably one of the top 5 biggest stars in boxing just with that victory alone. So there's so much riding on just that night in his regard. I mean, Canelo is going to Canelo and is going to dominate, in my opinion, and look great. But if he's able to pull off that upset, man, like I said, he's propelling himself into the automatic, multi-million-dollar purses for fights, headlining everywhere he goes from now on, no matter what. Like, there's a lot riding on it, and a couple feet in a ring could very well make a difference in that. So I feel like it's not just a
no.
Fight,
I agree.
No, absolutely.
But Priest, what about you? Corey, I'm assuming you're saying that it's not going to change the outcome overall.
No,
at this
Canelo's
point,
just so dominant, man. He looks like a next level when he gets in there with a lot of these guys. He has like that Israel Adesanya effect. I mean, of course, Izzy did lose his last fight, so these guys are self-susceptible. It is still combat sports. But that being said, Canelo's in a luckier sport. It's all hands. He doesn't have to worry about getting taken down and grounded out and so on and so forth. But he has that effect on people where they just don't look good and don't look like themselves when they fight Canelo. And I feel like we're going to see that again on Saturday.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against Canelo. I mean, I know like all the hype on this being like and to me it's all hype, but the southpaw factor, the pride of the country of England. There was an English dude that Canelo beat a couple of years ago. Is this still taking place in Dallas, or did they move it to somewhere else?
It's still in Dallas at AT&T Stadium.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if that was part of the ring mishap or not. Canelo fought. Didn't he just fight in Texas his last fight, or was that in Vegas? I mean, Canelo,
that was in Vegas. I believe that one was in Vegas.
Florida. It was Florida. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, Canelo. I mean, he's the
right because of who he had play him out too. Okay.
Yeah. Canelo. I mean, he's been doing these fights now, and it's just Billy Joe Saunders is the next guy up. And I know a lot of people are thinking that he's going to give him problems because he's a southpaw and he's a British guy, and there's that. The only thing that Billy Joe Saunders has done that I think, this ring mishap could, but the fact that he almost seems like he doesn't give a fuck about Canelo at all. Like he's not going to be intimidated by the bigger starred boxer. Like he's going to come in almost with that like British street mentality, which should make for a good fight. But I feel like in boxing, if you can weather that early storm and you're the better, more talented fighter, and like Canelo is, it's going to favor him. But if Billy gets in his head and he could come out and give him some problems early, that's for sure. But I mean, it's hard to bet against Canelo in a decision here. I mean, that's where I would probably
like I say, I don't think Canelo's losing, but I mean, here's a thought to go along off your point to the not give a fuck that Canelo has. I mean, not Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders has. This is probably going to be one of his biggest paydays, and he was willing to say, fuck you, I'm going home over the ring.
Yeah, I mean, he's got, from everything I've seen of the guy, and there's a couple clips and a few like tweets is really all my information on him. And I have never seen Billy Joe Saunders fight. I can honestly say that. But just that attitude he's bringing, I don't think Canelo's fought someone with that kind of attitude. And that could play a factor, especially early on in the fight. Once you get hit a few times, that goes out the window. That intimidation, that like pre-fight bullshit goes out the window once you start banging. So Billy Joe's got to catch him early. He's got to get him off his game early, try to get in his head early. If this thing gets into round 4 or 5, I think Canelo just takes over and cruises.
Well, I think we're all pretty much on the same hand with the Canelo fight. There's a lot of fights.
I do have to bring up, just because it is so prevalent and it is happening this weekend. Unfortunately, it's not the matchup we were all hoping for with Yoel Romero and Rumble Johnson. But Rumble Johnson stays in. He's fighting a poor fella named Jose Goga, nicknamed Guga, who's got one fight in Bellator, and I feel bad for him because he's fighting Rumble Johnson that's coming in there looking super fucking motivated, man. And I feel like Rumble he really dodged a bullet by not making his first fight back in 4 years be Yoel Romero. And I feel like that's going to really help propel his career forward, not having to fight such a stud in his first fight. I really honestly do.
Yeah, I mean, Rumble Johnson, like, he in a weird way, he's kind of a lot. He's a lot like Neil Magny, but the polar opposite in the fact that Rumble Johnson had all the talent in the world. He checked all those boxes, but he just was not a very smart fighter and wasn't very fundamentally sound. He was just a raw athlete with talent. But he could get on these winning streaks, and right when we would get to like that point where you're like, man, this guy is a fight away from getting a title shot or 2 fights away from a title shot, he would lose. He'd lose 2, and then he'd win 3, 4, get right back up there, much like Neil Magny's career, but just to get in there a different way. And then he retired surprisingly. I know he had weight cutting problems. I would not be surprised if Rumble Johnson lost, though. These are the type of fights that just you see it happen through history where the story's all on one guy, the fight changes, it's an underdog, he's got nothing going for him, and then boom, knocks him out. Like, especially with the layoff Rumble's had. Shouldn't happen, but I've seen Rumble Johnson lose some fights that you scratch your head and go, I did not see that coming.
So you're saying Rumble Johnson's going to follow the Anthony Pettis train and lose in his Bellator debut?
I'm gonna, yeah. I don't know what the odds are on this fight, but if they're heavy in go whatever dude, I have no idea who the fuck he is. His favor, I am going to throw a sprinkle on homeboy here because I just feel like what Corey said sounds like an upset to me.
It very well could be. And final break of the show, because I know we're all looking to get out of here, but this is breaking news.
Can I at least give my opinion first, you cock?
No, Kyle. Gosh. Yeah.
I'm only the host of this,
Hurry up.
bitch.
Hurry up. Fuck, Kyle. Gosh.
Well, it's kind of hard when you hit the mute button. You see here, folks, now you're getting to see behind the curtain. See, I'm the host of this here show, and this here Goldilocks-looking dude with long hair comes in here trying to tell me what I need to do. You need to go sit down and go eat you some Weed Guys fried chicken, and maybe you'll be able to hit you a home run too. But I think that Anthony Johnson is going to get him a dub. But I totally can see what you're saying, Priest. I definitely think it could be a little bit of a. We're gonna have to see what happens. It's been 4 years since the man's been in a fight, but I'll tell you, if he can get past this fight and then maybe get past Ryan Bader or whoever it ends up being in Bellator, Rumble Johnson could really run their heavyweight division.
Yep, I definitely agree. He looks next level when you look at him. The only person I feel like really stands a crack to him, other than maybe a Bader, is a Corey Anderson. I feel like Corey Anderson's a real sleeper when you look at like heavyweight division. He really is. So now we got your news across, Kyle. The breaking news is Verdum loses by ground and pound knockout.
Damn.
Just Anthony Johnson is losing. It's happening.
Well,
doing it
damn,
right
dude.
now.
2 out of the 3 big. Hold on a minute. So, what does this do for PFL to you guys? Because that's 2 out of the 3 big names that they brought in have now been knocked out, or not knocked out. Anthony Pettis wasn't knocked out, but he lost. Now you got Verdum lost, and you were toting him as the heavyweight GOAT, and he lost.
The
I
only
mean,
successful
damn, dude.
out of the 3 was Rory, and yeah, Verdum. I just happened to see the clips when I was looking at my phone for 2 seconds, and yeah, man, he got pieced up on the ground pretty hard. He had him in a triangle and was trying to squeeze his lights out, but just had his whole face exposed and was just getting lit up on the ground, man.
Well, Priest, what do you think? Do you think it's a killer for PFL?
I don't think it's a killer for PFL because I'm a pretty big MMA fan and I forgot they existed. So I didn't even know they were hyping up Fabricio Verdum in this. But if you're bringing in, so I would consider myself a diehard wrestling fan and a casual fight fan. Fabricio Verdum losing tonight means nothing to me as a casual fan, because if they advertise the next card with a name I know or a guy I know, I'm probably going to watch it if I can find it. If they advertise it properly with these names, they'll bring somebody in.
Well, they're on ESPN, man. I mean, it's all
I don't
over
watch
the place.
it. I hate that fucking channel. But but that's probably why I don't even know I forget they exist. But yeah, I mean, you said they had Rory McDonald there as well.
Rory McDonald's there.
So yeah, I'll watch Rory fight.
Rory just fought last week and won by a quick submission.
Yeah, I would have watched that fight. See,
he fought Curtis Millender from the
PFL. Promote your shit better. Appeal to guys like me who would watch your shit if they knew it happened. But Roy McDonald's a stud. He's a star. He has great fights. I would watch him fight. I would have watched Fabricio Verdum fight tonight. If I knew it, win or loss doesn't matter, because you know what? The other guy who beat him, now I know who he is had I seen the fight. And I might become a fan of that guy. So that's all you do. That's what Elite XC used to do. That's what Strikeforce used to do. That's what Bellator is doing, is you're just capitalizing on these guys' names and you're hoping they can win. But if they don't win, you hope they've drawn people to your product and they now tune in next week with whichever fighter you're advertising that hope these same fans know.
That's the advantage that PFL has with the season, though, because they're on every week. So hopefully they'll be able to still do something, at least in an Anthony Pettis' case. They're still early in the tournament, so Anthony's still going to get plenty of time to fight again. It's not going to be the end for him. Verdum, I think Verdum's fight was a single fight, but obviously I'm sure at some point they'll have a heavyweight.
He's in their heavyweight division, so he's full season.
I know, but I'm saying, was this a tournament fight?
Yeah, this was a tournament fight.
Okay, good. So then that means he's going to fight again soon in a couple weeks.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not the end for him either. Obviously, it's not the debut that maybe PFL was hoping for. But at the same time, man, I mean, like you said, it's names that people know. I think promotion is something that we've talked about, not only with PFL, but Bellator. I mean, but from what you and I have seen, Corey, I think it's not too far off to say that the first couple events that PFL did were pretty cool. I mean, they were a little shorter than what I maybe expected. But I also will say, to play devil's advocate on that, they're short and to the point. They got the fights that I came to see right there on the card. There's not a bunch of other shit. They got right to the point. So, I mean, PFL's got a lot to do. I mean, they've got a great on-site host and past guest of the show, James Lynch. But like I said, man, we got plenty to talk about with that and to see what's going to happen with Bellator. And hey, PFL, Bellator, if you're listening, feel free to send them to us. I mean, I got a feeling that we might be seeing a homie of ours in Miles Fury Jury coming back to the cage soon. But like I said, man, there's a lot to look forward to on the Bellator end and the PFL end. I'm interested to see what happens with Clarissa Shields here. Did you see how Kayla Richardson did?
Kayla Harrison?
Why did I say Richard? Why?
I knew what you meant. She dominated.
Man, first Alex Gracia, now Kayla. I'm saying Kayla Richardson. Damn it! I'm getting tongue-tied.
very, very, very dominant first round finish.
All right, that's kind of how I expected that fight to go, but we'll see if she can keep that up through the rest of the season. But
quick note with that, I feel like it helps PFL in the sense that it really legitimizes the rest of their roster. It lets you know that these guys are able to beat guys that you know that are top stars from other promotions, whether they're in the peak of their career anymore or not. It lets you know that they at least have guys of that caliber, and I feel like so that's the reason why it helps PFL.
I agree. Priest, you got any thoughts on that before we get out of here?
No, I know I agree. It's the same thing that, like, you know, ironically enough, Fabricio Verdum was the dude who beat Fedor when they were trying to set up a fight with Fedor, and I believe it was Randy Couture at the time. And they were really hoping that Fedor could beat Fabricio Verdum, and Verdum kind of ruined their plans. So now PFL's hypes up Verdum. He gets beat. Who's the guy who beat him? I need to know this dude's name.
I didn't catch a name because I didn't watch the fight yet. I'm gonna go back
That
and
is
watch it. But
terrible promotion by the PFL to not even have, you gotta know the guy's name. Anyhow, it's just that's the way the sport is. I mean, Fabricio had some name power when he beat Fedor, but the big stars lose and the new star gets made. And it's
I was right. I knew his name. I was trying to spit it out. I just didn't want to screw up another name. See, Corey, now you got me shook, you bastard. He was fighting Diego Ferreira.
Diego Ferreira?
He fought in Bellator before, didn't he? Or am I thinking of another guy?
I think he may have. I'm not for sure, but I think he may have.
I don't know why. I'm trying to remember who they're.
I'm pretty sure he did. I can't remember who it was, but I want to say he did. Don't quote me on it, but I think he did. But like I said, I don't think it's a killer, especially if it's a heavyweight tournament fight. Yeah. I mean, we're going to see him back in a couple weeks.
I mean, that first year PFL was around, I'm pretty sure Jake Shields lost in his first fight in the first round. And I'm pretty sure Rick Story and John Fitch both lost in their second fight. Like, the guys with names lost the guys I never heard of. Also could be a reason why I totally forgot PFL existed. However, they've had this happen to them before. They'll have it happen to them again. But as long as a guy like Rory McDonald keeps going out there fighting and winning, you know, that guy's got star power. So hopefully he wins for you.
Hey, man, we'll have to see what happens with PFL. We'll talk about star power. We'll have to talk on next Tuesday. You'll have to check us out next Tuesday at 9 p.m. See if there's any more developments in the Floyd Mayweather versus Jake Paul or Logan Paul or the Paul brothers in 2. Maybe it's going to be a handicap match. We know Floyd had his run with WWE. Who knows what's going to happen? But, yeah, man. There's a lot going on in the world of the fight game and pro wrestling. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're listening to us on all the podcast platforms. If it's Apple Podcasts, make sure you leave one of them 5-star reviews. That looks real good. And before I get out of here, Priest, why don't you let them know where they can find your fine podcast before we get out of here?
Ramblings of a Grappleman is available pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts. Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Anchor, Breaker, anything that ends with an R that plays podcast.
Breaker 19.
So that's where you can find it. You can listen to Ramblings of a Grappleman. I will have a new Ramblings of a Grappleman show out next week. I have an Elite Edition through the same network that will be dropping tomorrow. About AEW Dynamite Blood and Guts, which we review AEW every week. Nick Braxton and myself do. Occasionally, I'll have a gambling podcast. Last one we did was talking about the NFL draft, the NFL season. It's more sports-based. I do that with my brother whenever the hell we feel like it. No time schedule on that. Elite Edition's good every week. Ramblings of Gappleman's good every 2 weeks. I got a sponsor, showmethecovers.com. For the gambling fans out there, use the promo code GRAPPLE. Get 25% off your order. That's for those gambling folks out there. What else do I have to plug? Pro Wrestling Tees. Check out 3 Wise Men Media. There's some big things in the wrestling world that's going to be happening with them. So keep your eyes peeled to the Michigan wrestling scene with 3 Wise Men Media. Might be seeing some new wrestling content out there through them very soon. Also, just hit me up, Mathew _Priest on the Instagram, the Twitter. that's about all I got to plug, which is a lot. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity here, boys. I always have fun coming on and talking real grappling and choreographed grappling with you gentlemen.
Hey, man, I greatly appreciate it, man. We were stocked and ready to go. And anytime you want us to come ramble with a Grappleman, you know where to find us. Until next time and in the in-between time, make sure you get stocked up next Tuesday at 9. Make sure you got your Weed Guys fried chicken. You might strike out 25 times, but you'll get that one bitch-ass homer at the end. Until next time and in the in-between time, fuck your couch, especially Brian Lay. Peace.